All right, so we started this section of graphing the other day with the parabolas, okay, where there's that middle term. So we have to find the axis of symmetry, and we have to find the vertex, and then we're also going to be graphing them today. Okay, so the other day it just asked for those two things. You still need to find those two things, and then I'll show you a quick, easy way to graph them from there. Okay. So
Wait, we didn't have to graph.
I didn't open my book.
you didn't have to graph the first ones we did,
That's great.
but
This is the
all right.
first one.
So 16 y equals x squared plus 4x plus 8. So remember, our axis of symmetry is at minus b over 2a. So in this case, it's going to be negative 4 over 2 times a is just 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2, so that's going to be negative 2. So our axis of symmetry is at x is equal to negative 2. Okay, so I'm going to keep a note of that. Then our vertex, we plug that value in for x in this equation. So our vertex is at the point negative 2, and we have to find it. So negative 2 squared plus 4 times negative 2. That's supposed to be plus 8. So negative 2 squared is 4. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. And then plus 8. Those two cancel, so that just leaves you with 4. So my vertex is at negative 2, 4. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my graph. All right, so my axis of symmetry is at x is equal to negative 2. Okay, so it's going to fall on here, okay, and I want you to draw it, okay, because, well, you'll see why in a second, but I want you to draw that. So you're going to draw an up and down line wherever your axis of symmetry occurs, okay? It's just a dotted line because it's not actually there. It's just an imaginary pivot point for your parabola, okay? Your vertex is at the point negative 2 and 4. So negative 2 and up to the 4. And we put that point on our axis of symmetry. Okay, pretty easy so far, right? Now, I'm going to need to extend this up a little farther than where I have it. All right, so then the easiest thing to do, okay, I need to find the other points. Okay, what? Oh. They're what I ordered like a month ago, and they just came in. They're really squishy.
Oh!
He's off the roof.
You can break on.
I'm not gonna break it.
Are we
Oh.
No, you hold Brandon's one. Hey.
Whoa.
You can jump.
They're really squishy.
Tori's in front of fit.
It's like them,
She's terrified of monkeys.
It's like them
Brandon's just over here just.
them like foods.
Yeah, that's what they were talking about earlier in one of my classes.
They don't smell.
They don't smell though.
Oh.
All right, so with these, okay, your axis of symmetry, okay? With symmetry, I don't know if you talked about this in science yet. Brandon, you would have probably, but they may not have yet.
I haven't taken science in like 2 years.
Okay, well then maybe not. All right, well, symmetry, that means that whatever you've got on one side, it's copied onto the other side. You're-
I have ADHD, so hold on.
How do you outgrow it?
All right, so your axis of symmetry, okay? If you go 2 to the right from your axis of symmetry, then whatever that value is, you're also going to go 2 to the left and do the same thing. So if I can, I'm always going to use 0. Okay, it's the easiest one. So I'm going to take x is equal to 0.
What if you can't use 0?
And then you choose another number and hope for the best.
Can you post the link for these on Google Classroom?
They're just on Amazon, but they're out of stock like a lot, so. All right, so when x is equal to 0, I'm going to plug that into the original. So y is equal to 0 squared plus 4 times 0 plus 8. Okay, so this stuff goes away, and all I'm left with is 8. So my next point that I'm going to graph is at 0, 8. Okay, so 0 and then up to 8. Okay, now whatever happens on one side happens on the other. I was 1, 2 away from the axis of symmetry on this side, so I'm going to go 1, 2 away and come all the way up. I don't even have to do any more math. I just have to know a little bit about symmetry and connect the dots, more or less.
Why are
Can
you playing with this monkey?
What?
So basically, you just put 0 in for x in the equation down at the bottom of the row.
Yeah, so I use this equation still,
Yeah, and you just replace that.
and I just replace the x's with zeros to get that other point.
Okay.
The next thing, I would typically look at 0, I would look at 1, I would look at -1. Those are all numbers that are easy to use. I always try to use a positive number if that's an option.
What if you try to use 16? I'm just curious.
You could, but like if you put in 16, you've got to square 16, then you've got to add it to 4 times 16, then you've got to add 8. So I'm always using, I am trying to teach you the absolute simplest way to do this. Now, you could absolutely solve this problem the same way we did in section 1 by just plugging in points. But there may be times where you start plugging in -1, 0, and 1 like we did in the last section, and those values might be like 30,000 because your graph may have actually been shifted over, okay, right or left, and you won't know that. So that's why you always find the vertex and axis of symmetry first, or axis of symmetry then vertex. Then you can go from that axis of symmetry 1 or 2 steps away and get an easy number. All right, so then let's look at another one. 18. Y equals 5x squared plus 10x minus 3. Okay, so to find my axis of symmetry, I'm looking at -b over 2a. So it's going to be -10 over 2 times a is 5, which happens to be 10 over 10, but it's going to be negative, so it's going to be -1. Okay, so my axis of symmetry is at x equals -1. Okay, so I like to circle the important information so that I can find it in my work when I go back and solve them. Okay, my vertex then, I'm going to plug this value in to solve it. So my vertex is at -1, and I got to find the y point. So -1 is going in for x. So 5 times -1 squared plus 10 times
Joey broke
-1.
your monkey.
You broke it.
No, he handed it to me. He
You
said,
had it.
No, he said, "Do you want my monkey?"
It wasn't broken when I had it.
That's why we can't have nice things.
Joey was twisting its head, and
I was not twisting
Yes,
his
you
head.
were. I protect.
Okay,
my monkey.
and so -1 squared is +1 times 5 is 5. So this is 5. 10 times -1 is -10. Then -3. So that's going to be -13 plus 5, which is -8. So my vertex is at -1, -8.
No head in.
Yes, it.
All right, so my axis of symmetry is at x equals -1. So I'm making my little axis of symmetry there. My vertex is at -1, -8. So on my axis of symmetry, I come down to -8. Now, I'm going to plug in 0 to this original equation. So, 5 times 0 is 0, plus 10 times 0 is 0, so -3. So, at 0, I'm going to go to -3. That's 1 away from my axis of symmetry, so I'm going to go 1 away on the other side and draw the other point. And connect the dots. Alright, 20.
You had it.
You handed it to
Y
me.
equals -4x squared plus 4x plus 8. Alright, axis of symmetry. Minus b over 2a, so -4 over 2 times a is -4. So, 4 and 4 are going to cancel. Negative and negative cancel. So, my axis of symmetry is at 1/2. Vertex. So, I'm going to plug in 1/2 up here. Okay, I know we hate fractions, but that's just the reality of this stuff. We are going to have fractions. So, I need to find the y coordinate, so I'm plugging it in. -4 times 1/2 squared plus 4 times 1/2 plus 8. Okay? Now, if I have a fraction and it's being squared, okay, then what I really have is 1 squared over 2 squared. Okay? So, 2 squared is what? 4. So, this is now -4 times 1 over 4 plus, okay, this 4 and this 2 are going to cancel to give me a 2 plus 8. These 4s are going to cancel, leaving me with -1 plus 2 plus 8. So, this is 1 plus 8 is 9. So my vertex is at 1/2 and 9. So I'm going to come over here and graph them. Alright, so my axis of symmetry is at x equals 1/2. So that's just halfway between 0 and 1.
Wow.
Surprise. Alright, the vertex is at 1/2 and 9. So I actually need to probably go up a little bit farther with this. Alright, so at 1/2 and 9, so it's up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, before I do anything else, I want you to notice something. There's a negative sign in front of the first term. So rather than being upright, it's going to be down. Okay, so instead of it looking like a U, it's going to look kind of like an N. Okay, so again, if 0 is an option, I'm always going to use 0. And 0 will be an option unless the vertex is at 0. Okay? That's the only time that it's not going to work. Or if you're at it like, you know, your axis of symmetry is at x equals 20, you're not going to want to use 0. You're not going to like that answer. So, plug in 0. So, -4 times 0 is 0. Plus 4 times 0 is 0. Plus 8. So, that's going to be 8. So, one side of the axis of symmetry, I do it to the other as well. And connect the dots. Nothing too crazy, right?
I don't know. The fraction's kind of looking at me funny.
I think it's just the monkey.
Your book probably isn't going to give you any fractions that are like super whack. I'm not going to give you a problem that starts with fractions in it. So the most fractions you're going to have are whatever's coming out of your axis of symmetry.
Hey, the monkeys have names.
Yeah. The one that Joey killed is Blue Raspberry.
That was not me.
No, that was Joey.
You have strawberry and grape. And he
should've
has
been-
chocolate.
This should have been named Pepto-Bismol.
Let's go.
Joey, shut up! You killed him.
I did not.
Yes, you
do
did.
that.
All right.
I handed it to you
he said,
alive.
no, you did not. He said, you want this monkey? And I said, sure. I should have never fallen for his
And
tricks.
then you took it by the head.
No, I did not. I took it by the body.
No, you did.
Yes, I did. I put my hand
All right. I want you guys to try this one on your own, okay?
You know what? I'll protect the monkey's wallet.
And then we'll go over it. Okay, so, all right, well, my axis of symmetry would be where? Or how would I find it?
Wait, no. That's what I'm confused about. I have 3/4.
That might be right. Let me see. All right, so negative, and then b is negative, so that's going to be negative 12 over 2 times a is negative 8. So the negatives on top become a positive, okay? So that gives me 12 over, but this on the bottom, that's still negative, so that's going to be negative 16. You can take out a 4, so it's going to be negative 3/4. So then,
I don't know what to do with fractions.
so that's my x, okay, my axis of symmetry there. So then my vertex is at negative 3/4 and, well, we have to find it. So, plug this in up here. Okay, parentheses are going to be your friend because of the negative signs, okay? All right, so when we have a fraction that's being squared, okay, the squared piece goes to both the top and the bottom, okay? So this would be, I have to deal with what's in here first, okay? Don't say there's a negative and a negative here, I'm canceling them. That's not a true statement, okay? You've got to do what's inside first. So I'm going to copy down my negative 8. Then in here, negative being squared makes that positive, so that negative sign is gone. Okay? 3 squared is 9 over 4 squared is 16. Now, when I get to this part, I have a negative and a negative being multiplied, so that's going to be positive. This 4 can go into 12 3 times. So 3 times 3 is 9. And then plus 1 at the end. So then now, I've got 8 and I've got 16. 8 can go into 16 2 times. So I'm going to cross this out, cross that out, make that a 2. So now that negative sign's still there. So it's negative 9 over 2 plus. Now, I'm going to go ahead and try to get a common denominator to make my life a little bit easier. Instead of sitting here trying to figure out what it is. If you want to flip it to a decimal and do it that way, that's okay too. Let's just do it that way instead. Hold on. Alright, so 9 over 2 is what? As a decimal. How many times does 2 go into 8? 4. 4, and then 2 goes into 1. Half time. So this is going to be negative 4.5. Okay, then plus 9, plus 1. So this is 10 plus negative 4.5. So if I subtract 4.5 from 10, that's going to leave me with 5.5.
I don't know how I got
Hey,
y
yo.
equals 6 minus 9 plus 1. I don't know how I got that.
Okay, so my other point is going to be 5.5. Okay, 3/4. Okay, 3/4 is how many cents? 75. So I can, if I want to think about this all in decimals, negative 0.75 and 5.5. Okay, if you want to think about it that way. You want to do it as fractions, like that's fine too. It doesn't really matter. But so then I'm going to go to graph it. Okay, now what do you notice about this problem?
It's got the negative in front.
The negative in front, so it's going to open upside down. Okay? So. Alright, so my axis of symmetry is that x is equal to negative 3/4. So that's almost to 1. Okay, it's negative, so put it here. Okay. Now, this is where when I'm graphing, as long as you get it to look relatively accurate, that's fine. Okay, I'm not gonna like get my ruler out and be like, oh, they went this far away on this side, but they only went this far away on the, like, no, I'm not gonna get out a magnifying glass, ruler, whatever. Like, it's an estimate. Okay, it's not perfect. If it needs to be perfect, you would have a calculator or some kind of graphing tool online to use. Okay, so my vertex is on the axis of symmetry up at 5.5. I'm going to use 0 because it's an option. So if I plug in 0, first term goes away, second term goes away, I'm left with 1. So at 0, it's at 1. Okay, I go over something that looks relatively close there. It's good enough. And connect the dots. Okay, see, my graph's not perfect, but it's close. Okay, and that's all you have to do.
What is the
I hate fractions.
What's the what?
Oh, that's negative 35.
It's negative. The whole problem is negative, so it opens upside down. Which you should be able to find out from just from your graph. You plotting those points, you would have realized it's upside down. But if you wanted to know, like when you're trying to figure out how to sketch out your graph to start it, if you look out here, if this is negative, then it's going to open upside down.
The first bottom point, which one is that?
This one?
No, the other one.
This one.
Yeah.
So I found this one by plugging in 0 to this equation, this y equation. Okay, and then when I found that one, I just go equal distance from the axis of symmetry to get the other one. So you only have to do math for your axis of symmetry and your vertex, and then a little bit of mental math for finding the other point. All right, so the problems, I think I gave you a few, not yesterday, Friday, 3, 5, and 7. So I'm going to add on to that 15, 17.
You broke his neck. Yes, you did. We have a court case real quick that Joey. You
I
did not.
watched you take it from my hand
No.
and just rip its head off.
Whoa there, Joey. Why would I do that to poor Mr.
What?
19 and 21. Okay, 19 and 21 are going to end up with fractions, but they shouldn't be too bad. 21 is going to be a little worse than 19, but neither one of them should be too bad in terms of the math that you have with it. Okay? And this is another one of those things where I'm just going to point out, okay, we get to a quiz or a test, and you're sitting there like, man, I'm really struggling with these fractions. Okay? Show me the steps of you plugging it in. Okay? You know what to do. You know that it's got to go back in. If you really can't figure out what it's supposed to be, just put a note on there and be like, I honestly don't know how to proceed with this, but I know I've got to solve putting this value in for x in the equation. Okay? And then do your best to try to graph something. Okay? I don't intentionally give you ones with fractions, but sometimes when I go through and I'm picking problems, I don't realize that I've chosen one that's going to end up with fractions. Okay, it's just inevitable. It happens on occasion. So just be aware of that.